Got beat by a team that was, very well prepared and very balanced. Very balanced was the word that comes into mind. They have a good inside game. They have good perimeter players. Their perimeter players shot the ball much better than we had seen in tape. Maybe something might have had something to do with defensively us not being able to get out and guard them without them getting by us. We try to contain the dribble a little bit. I thought we were a little bit late in our defensive rotations, but I think I give the credit to them. They really played well tonight, and we got beat by a better team. I don't think it was our best, but I don't know if our best would have beaten them the way they were playing tonight.
You mentioned you hadn't seen them shoot that well on tape. Did that take you by surprise that they were able to?
Well, there were a couple that can really shoot it, but they really collectively, Reynolds was off tonight. I mean, he was off to the races. I've never seen him shoot from the outside like that. I know he's a good player, but we didn't. We were trying to actually take away his penetration because he's so good at that. He's a slasher. That's how we had him described. But he proved that he can really stick the ball.
They seem to be able to kind of get into the lane and then create those open looks. So did their athleticism give you guys a little bit of trouble?
Yeah, that's well put. We didn't do basically a good enough job, and they moved the ball very, very well. They feel unselfish, and we took our head to the way they did a nice job offensively.
Alex, talk to me about the first. You had a 19-14 lead at one point, and it looked like you were having some success, particularly against the big guys down low. What were you doing that was working?
To start the game, we had some success, but I thought what was kind of a turning point was when they went to that zone. I feel like we weren't as prepared as we would have liked to be with the 30-second shot clock. I thought we struggled with that a little bit in the beginning, especially when they went to the zone. We weren't getting many good looks. Then we let that carry onto the other end, where we weren't getting stops, and then we were struggling with the zone, and we weren't getting stops, and they went on. It was 19-14, then we looked up, and they had a 10-point lead going into halftime. So I thought that's where the game started to get away from us, which is a little disappointing.
Talk to me about playing against the 2-3 zone. Do you see much of that in your regular season, in particular in the Ivy League play?
We haven't seen too much 2-3 zone this year, but we've been relatively effective against it. Personally, I'm a little disappointed that, a lot of times against the zone, if you can knock down some threes, it'll take them right out of it, and I got a few very good looks that I wasn't able to put down, and they stayed in it, and we were struggling to get the ball into our high-low game against the zone, and I got a few more good looks and couldn't get them to go down, and it gave their zone some success, which is pretty frustrating looking back at the game. But bottom line, we didn't execute well against it. All year we haven't seen too much zone, but that's partially because we play well against it for the most part.
What did you guys think of that 30-second shot clock today?
We did practice with it. We didn't have a ton of practices, but we had a couple practices. We've been in exams, and every practice we've had that we went up and down, we had the 30-second clock on, and it didn't really affect us during practice. I think, as Alex said, we didn't get into our zone offense perhaps quick enough to get a couple extra reversals and spread the zone out a little bit. And then we didn't execute. Even when we got the ball inside, we didn't do a good job. But the bottom line is, we can't give up 38 points in the first half and 80. Let a game get into the 80s. We're not that type of offensive. We don't have those offensive weapons to contain a team like that. We've got to do a better job on the defensive end, and that had nothing to do with the clock.
Okay. Well, going forward, now that you've seen a full 40 minutes of it, would you be in favor of the NCAA maybe changing that?
Yeah, I like 30 seconds. I think 30 seconds would. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I wouldn't want to go below that, but I think 30 seconds and working against that might make the game, a higher scoring game like this one was. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody talks about how the games are getting so low scoring. You look at the NCAA games, and there was a game in the 30s. Georgia State game, you know, it was 38-36, something like that, so, in the conference final. So I guess maybe it would help a little bit for that.
Okay, and then just you guys lost today, but this ended like a 50-something year postseason drought for you guys. Just what does it mean to be here?
Well, I think I think the program, this was a nice step. This was a nice step. It's not near what we want to get to, but it was a very nice step. The kids deserve a ton of credit. We've had different things happen as far as injuries and suspensions and all that, but the kids really found a way to put it all together and not make excuses and end the season on a high note. And I wish this was a little better game, a little closer game. But you know, witnessing the kids, they just never give up. And but St. Canisius is a little bit better, and they have that balanced attack, which we just couldn't.
Alex, was there a good buzz on campus about finally getting back to the postseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people watched the Yale game, and that was kind of catapulted us into the postseason. And it ended on a buzzer beater, and it ended up sort of knocking them out of the NCAA tournament. And that was shown on ESPN and stuff. So a lot of people on campus, you know, were congratulating us, and it definitely started a little bit of a buzz, which was nice, and we'd like to carry that into next year and everything. But again, like Coach has been saying, it's somewhat disappointing that we didn't. We had the effort tonight in the second half, but we didn't play the first half with the effort that we played in the second half. And it's not about, you know, playing at that speed and being overly aggressive like we did in the second half, but you can still play with that amount of effort, just in a more structured way, and we didn't do that in the first half.
Paul, talk to me about the state of the program when you first got to Dartmouth back in the 80s when we were both a lot younger, and what you have now in terms of how you try to build the program to a higher competitive level.
Well, when I took over in the 80s, the program was, you know, there wasn't much of a commitment. And back then, there were a lot of schools in the Ivy League that, you know, obviously academics is number one, but some schools, Penn, Princeton back then, Cornell to some degree, were really putting the emphasis into athletics a little bit more than the rest of us. And they were effective. They were the top 2 or 3 best teams when I first came. But at that time, it was a lot easier to make games than the second time, because now to every school, men's basketball is important. So now moving up the ranks has been much more difficult. Back in the 80s, if you had 1 or 2 good recruits, all of a sudden you jumped maybe 2 or 3 spots. Now you have to get 3 or 4 good recruits just to stay and not let people move up, you know, as far as you go. So the Ivy League has become much, much more attractive to good basketball players. They're starting to really realize the benefit of getting an Ivy League degree and still going on and having a chance to play if you're good enough.
So you're at a point now where you've made it into the top half of the league. What's the next step to be able to be more competitive with a Harvard and a Yale?
Yeah, I mean, when I spoke to the kids at our banquet and since then, you know, we've had situations when we're playing at our best, and maybe the opposition isn't playing as well as they can because they've taken us a bit lightly. Well, we've woken them up, and now they're playing hard, and this year they played us hard, and we still found a way to go 500 in the league. And we also, I guess we're the only team that actually beat Harvard and Yale, clearly the two best teams in the league this year, and we were the only. So we've had our moments, but that's it. We've had our moments. What we want to do is not have our moments. We want it to be going into games expecting to win, you know, and we go in knowing we can win. I don't know if we're quite at the point where we expect to win, and that's what we have to get to.
Would you agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've had very good moments, and we've played great halves, and at times great, you know, stretches of basketball. But our biggest issue this year is being consistently playing our best, and that's sort of why we ended up being one game under 500. But before the postseason, 500 was because we struggled to consistently play at our best, and I feel like with the talent we have and the group of guys we have, when we play our best, there's not really a game on our schedule that we shouldn't be down to the wire in.
Now that you've had